All right, so our next guest joining us now is going viral for something that happened on The View. We're going to get to Jedediah Bila here in just a second, but I want you to see this clip. Watch.
I just don't understand why you would choose to prioritize your personal freedom over health and safety of others. And I just really don't think that we should allow this kind of misinformation on our website. We've had the United States Surgeon General debunk.
Yes, I heard what he said.
Everything that you've just said, and I just don't think we should allow this kind of misinformation on our air. I'm really sorry, my friend. I'm really sorry, my friend.
First of all, I would say to you as a friend, what I just said to you is I am prioritizing my health, and people talk about the common good.
Over the health and safety of other people.
You're not going to have a common good if you're not prioritizing your own health. You have the Surgeon General.
This should sound very familiar to you, Jed. This should sound very familiar to you. We got to go to break. And so I have to say, thanks to Jedediah Bila, you can buy
So Jedediah, there you go. You're a liar here, putting out fake information, but we got to go to break. We'll see you later. Man, that was quite the interaction here, and we thank you for joining us to talk about what you were trying to talk about on that interview, which is your book, Dear Hartley, and we'll get to that. And I'm also here with Billy Hallowell and goins-phillips from CBN's Faithwire. So glad to have you on. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. I had forgotten at the end of that I said, follow the science, people. I had forgotten that part. Wow, well done,
That was my
Jen.
favorite part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went on to talk about this adorable book I have behind me with a cute little baby on the cover. But I did know, what's interesting is that I did know that we were going to talk about the mandates ahead of time. We had done a full pre-interview where I told a segment producer, this is how I feel about it. He was well aware. So there were no surprises. And what I expected was that, okay, they know where I stand. They know that I haven't been able to co-host with them. I was supposed to co-host 3 times so far, and I wasn't able to do it because I have a medical exemption. I have natural immunity. I submitted multiple letters from doctors, saying one cover letter that detailed why I'm not a candidate for this vaccine, lab work. I mean, I really was quite extensive in providing that information, and it was declined. So I knew that I was going to be remote, but I did anticipate having a conversation because they knew where I stood on this ahead of time. So I still can't figure out why I was there if the second I started saying exactly what I had said in the pre-interview, they were going to shut me down, unless that was the idea. Maybe that was the idea the whole time. I don't know. That would be sad if that was the case. But the interesting part about it is, first of all, the Surgeon General didn't refute those things that I was saying because what I was saying was directly from the mouth of the CDC. Not that I love the CDC so much. They've made countless mistakes. I mean, they're a clown show. But on the issue of transmission, they actually have been right. And all I was saying is, look, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I don't want to play doctor. I want you to make that decision with your family, with your own doctor, your own trusted doctors. But the bottom line is that vaccinated and unvaccinated people can get COVID and can transmit COVID. So what is the scientific basis for a mandate? This was a conversation about mandates.
Yeah.
And why not? Why couldn't they push back and have a conversation? I just don't get it.
Yeah, there's this knee-jerk reaction that's so weird when it comes to the vaccine. Like you instead of them saying, being interested on that, and these are people who know you, you'd think that they'd say, let me hear, why do you say that? Like, what are you talking about? Instead of hearing you out, it's this visceral reaction. It sounds like it's being negative about the vaccine, so we need to just silence that. It's very bizarre to see that reaction.
Well, they don't just know. I mean, Sonny was at my wedding, it's not just people they know that I come from a good place, that I care about my family. I care about my child. I care about other people. I'm not trying to get anyone else sick. All I was just saying is that creating a one size fits all approach to health is hurting a lot of people. So if your argument is about the common good, what about all the people being told by their physicians that this isn't good for them, and they're now having to choose between following their doctor's advice and losing their source of income? I mean, does that sound empathetic or compassionate? So I was just trying to say, I hear what you're saying. This is why it's not grounded in science. And what about all of these people around the country that are suffering as a result of the mandate? Not the vaccine. This wasn't a conversation about the vaccine. If you want to get vaccinated, you should go get vaccinated. That is not up to me. This was a conversation about forcing people to get vaccinated when it may not be in their best interest to do so.
Yeah, and I just want to throw in one thing about the common good here, Billy, and then I'll let you hop in. To me, that's also just a weird thing that society sort of decided that we're going to value the common good over individual preference. And you get into this Jack Bauer sort of mode where that's always the theme in 24, right? If you watch that show, it's like, well, they want me to execute this guy on my own team here, or else they're going to set off a bomb somewhere. And so they, then they get into these moral dilemmas. And it's like, that's not how we operate as people. You don't give into the terrorist demands and just start executing people because they might kill more people. That's not the way we operate. That's on them if they kill more people, right? And so it's just a weird moral setup that we've gotten into. So.
Yeah, and the common good, I mean, the argument makes no sense. So you're supposed to sacrifice your individual well-being. You are part of that common space, right? So if I sacrifice my own well-being, I have a child, I have a family, that doesn't help anyone. So the common good gets better when you do right by individuals within that common space. And that means that every individual, when it comes to their own health and wellness, look, Bill de Blasio, Joe Biden, these people don't know anything about me personally. Neither does the team at The View. They don't know anything about my personal medical history. That's between me, my family, and my doctor. So I find it really odd that these people are so bothered by you making your own decisions. That's really what's going on. This isn't about this vaccine. This isn't about, the next thing. This is about a desire for this collectivist groupthink and a desire to allow big institutions to take away individual liberties. Because if they can mess with your health in terms of your, affecting your health decisions and taking that voice away from you, they can do anything and they know it. So this is an issue for me where you should stand your ground, whatever that may be.
Yeah, and it felt a little strange to have it go to that level. It felt very personal almost. Oh, we can't even let you speak because what you're saying is so dangerous. I mean, as a viewer sort of watching that, I thought that's a really strange place to take it when you're talking to somebody who not only was asked to host a number of times, you have been a host on the show for a season in the past. So how did it feel walking away from that part of it? Because that seemed tough.
It felt sad. I feel the irony here is that the whole book that I wrote is about empowering young people to be able to go into spaces with people who disagree with them and have these important conversations. So the book is a tribute to respectful, free-thinking people who can engage in conversation. And there I am on air to promote that book and getting shut down. What I would have loved is for them to come back with some facts of their own, to engage me, to say, hey, I see where you're coming from, but here's what I have to say. Here's why I disagree. Here's the other perspective. I would have absolutely welcomed that exchange. That's why I was there, at least why I thought I was there. But, what I was saying wasn't misinformation. And they cite the Surgeon General. The Surgeon General didn't disprove that stuff. The Surgeon General was talking about antibody counts and saying, I watched the segment on their show. He was essentially saying, we don't know what that exact number is that qualifies as natural immunity for the people who have these antibodies who are previously infected. So we can't really count that. That's ridiculous. I mean, do you know what the exact number is for the vaccinated? There's plenty of you get vaccinated. My mom, as an example, got vaccinated, went back to get an antibody count test because her doctor said, let's decide if you need a booster. How do you decide if you need a booster? They look at your antibodies. So she's been looking at her antibodies. What's that number? If my number is 23 times her number, what is that? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no intellectual curiosity for people to just say, hold on a second, that doesn't really make sense, because you're not doing that for vaccinated people. And we know there are hundreds of thousands of breakthrough cases around the country. So my problem, again, is why are two classes of citizens being created here, the vaccinated and the unvaccinated, when the reality is that both of those groups of people can get this virus and can make someone else sick. That's just a reality. And that is not pro-vaccine, anti-vaccine. That's just the truth. With that information, people should be able to make their own decisions, and you should not have big-powered corporate entities making those decisions for you in light of that reality.
Yeah, and I want to, if I set aside the legal concerns about these vaccination mandates, my biggest concern and fear has been the social damage, right, that comes from it, the otherizing of people who choose differently, the villainizing, and we saw that on display on The View. And your book, like you mentioned, is all about character and kindness, and I can't help but think that we need so much of that in this toxic culture we've created. So how do you, I know you explore this in your book, but maybe you can explain, how do we kind of get out of that knee-jerk reaction to villainize the person who makes a decision different from us, even if it's a completely logical and reasonable position like you?
I think, what I'm seeing is there's two worlds here. There's the media world, and then there's the real world. Things don't happen in real life the way they do on television. I mean, television, division is a business model on television. It's like, what can we get people to tune into? The big fight, Republican, Democrat, go at it. Oh, there's someone on with a differing opinion. We can make a big moment happen if we just shut her down. That is the nature of television media, cable news media. That is what's happening right now in this moment in time. It wasn't always like that. I can remember when I started in this business 10 years ago, it was actually quite different. That's where it is right now. That's why a lot of people are tuning out of those spaces and in the listening to podcasts. They want a real conversation. I cannot tell you how many people I heard from this week who wrote me messages who said, you know what? I don't really see it the way you do, but I really wanted to hear what you had to say. Mm-hmm. They wanted that conversation. So I think it starts with parenting. I think it starts in communities where people need to stop modeling that horrible behavior that you see in media and recognize, oh, that's because they want clickbait. That's because they think that's good for ratings. That's not because it's good for the world. That's not good for discourse. You don't want your kids. What are you going to send your kids to school? And the second someone disagrees with them, they're going to be disrespectful, shut it down, shout for a safe space, and create a scene. I mean, that is not, you're building a nation of coddled babies who are disrespectful. So you have to decide, you know what? I don't want that to be the way my kid deals with the world, because your kids, there's going to be millions of people. I mean, you're going to interact. I interact in New York City. Most of the people I interact with disagree with me. Their worldview is different. But I mean, you have to just, I think it starts at home. I think it starts with the schools that you choose to send your kids to and what the dynamic is there. Some parents are choosing to homeschool for that very reason. But it's all about community and kind of ignoring all of that noise, because it's not reflective of real life. It's not like that moment on television. That's not how real people in real life are interacting, thankfully. Yeah. But you need to understand that is what thrives in media right now in this moment. It's not healthy, but it is thriving.
Yeah, and I think, you know what, we're starting to see, you say that's not how people react in real life, and I think you're right, but I do think we're starting to see the Twitter sphere bleed into real life a little bit. Like, you see people think like, oh, well, I need to have this interaction, or I need to film this guy and shame him at the store with the mask, So they're going for those sorts of moments because they sit there and stare at their phones all day. But you're right, it's not real life. But let's talk about your book, which is what you were supposed to be talking about in there. And I would love to hear your kind of heart and soul behind this book, because it's obviously a very personal one. I saw that you were talking about just how you kind of discovered the importance and the power of just writing handwritten notes.
I love this book because it's very real, it's very raw, and it's the kind of thing that reminds everyone of shared humanity. Like I said, you're not going to see the world the same as everyone else. You may see it very differently, but that doesn't prevent you from having those important conversations. So I write about everything. I write about faith. I write about family. I write about bad decisions I've made career-wise and moments that I would do things differently if I could go back. I talk about character and friendship and heartbreak. And my passion for handwritten letters actually started when I was young. I was 19 years old, and I was in love with someone, and we left. We were both traveling. I actually left for Spain at the time to a summer study abroad, and he left to go to Costa Rica and teach. And I was heartbroken. I was completely heartbroken. So I was in Spain and I was writing handwritten letters to my best friend at the time. And it was the way that I kind of dug myself out of that pain, figured out what I wanted to do, direction, gained a sense of self, was able to enjoy and experience the world again. So the handwritten letters really helped me find my voice in that moment. And throughout the pandemic, I looked at my child, and there was so much division, and there was so much anger and confusion and fear that I said, you know what, I want to do something for him that throughout his life can anchor him in values that I think will only help him, at every stage of life. And maybe he'll look back. And it started as letters to Hartley. They actually started as handwritten letters. And while I was writing it, I said, you know what, I think people everywhere could benefit from this. Like the world needs this type of book. And I actually ditched another proposal that I had already gotten an offer for an advance on an education book. And I was like, you know what? This is the book the world needs more than that one. So I switched gears. I wrote it. Then I panicked because I was like, can I say all this to the world? It's so personal. Then my literary agent talked me off the ledge and I published it. So here we are.
You know, one of the things you talk about in the book is the humility that comes from believing in something bigger than yourself. I wanted to see if you would be willing to speak to that a little bit for us.
Yeah, it's funny. Religion was something that I struggled with in life, just to kind of find out what that meant to me. I went to Catholic school my whole life, and organized religion was something that I could never find myself in. I don't know what it was. And maybe it was just that I was in a very regimented school, discipline was number one at all times. And I didn't want an experience with God to feel that way. I felt very stifled a lot of the time. So I kind of made it my own. And I do believe in God. I made prayer my own. It's something that I say in my own words. I found God in moments that I felt alone and I needed someone, and it was just a feeling. It just felt like there was someone there with me. And I have found that believing in something bigger than myself, it just grounds me in life. It's like there are moments that have been really hard. This was not an easy year for me, work-wise and whatnot. But there were moments that I would just be able to lean back on the faith that I had. And it just kind of, I don't know, it feels like a little pillow beneath your body.
I think there's what you're talking about, the concept of what you put out is what you get. That's a biblical concept too. You reap what you sow. We see that throughout a whole lot of the faith world and the faith experience. But I want to go back to your comment about writing notes. Several years ago, an aunt of mine said, this was pre-COVID, many years pre-COVID. She said, we need to get back to using analog clocks because you can actually see the passage of time with a clock that you don't see with a digital clock. And I thought, because time goes so fast, we don't really think about it. But so it's important to know that. And a handwritten note, I think, kind of forces you to slow down. And I think this world has, particularly since COVID, everything just goes by so fast. Time just seems truncated. How have you maybe tried to slow down and not get so caught up in the outrage machine and in the social media cycle and say, let me just take a break and be with my kid, be with my husband, and just enjoy the moment?
Yeah, there's a chapter on technology that comes over from my last book. I wanted to emphasize for my kid that technology has a place in the world, but being on these apps all day long and constantly staring at your phone, it's just not good for you. And you miss out on so much. That stuff kind of makes you crazy and gets the adrenaline rushing and makes everyone feel like their blood's boiling. But you have to come down from that. You have to take that walk amid nature. You have to connect with human beings actually by looking them eye to eye. And I think a lot of times because we exist in these phones all the time, that's why there's no sense of humanity. You mentioned earlier about social media. It's because you're not looking at people as people anymore. They're just it's like, oh, that, who is that? You don't know them. It's just this little picture. It's not the same as an in-person interaction where you would speak differently. You would carry yourself differently. You would have more humanity in those conversations. So for me, it involves, I always have a space in life, and I talk about all this in the book too and how I went about it, but nature is very healing for me. Getting outside, because again, you're outside in the midst of things that are much bigger than you are. Spending time for me, it was with my child, with my husband. Go for a hike. We have a beach nearby. Walk in sand. Look up at a sky. Not have a constant surge of noise in your ear all the time. Leave your phone at home for those walks. Yeah. I exercise outside as much as I can, things like meditation and exercise, and something as simple as just enjoying a meal without any distractions of technology can be extraordinary. How many people eat dinner now with a phone sitting on the table? Yeah. And you're immediately inviting that chaos into your moment. Instead of inviting that chaos into your moment, leave the chaos outside, So
yeah, we've banned them at our dinner table. We do not allow them. That is our rule.
Yeah, same with us.
And that's smart.
And it's such a weird. I'm getting to that point now where enough technology has changed. I'm 46 years old, so I said to my kids, back in my day, we walked on broken glass roads and barefoot, and we liked it. You know, I feel like I'm that guy, but it's true though, because social media, it makes it easy to just, you can be an egg account and you can just say whatever is on your mind and just say it, no filter whatsoever. You know, when I was in high school, you had to, if you wanted to ask a girl out, you had to go talk to her, right? Right. You couldn't just send a DM. You couldn't just send some emojis and hope it all went well. Right. And you had to actually get up the courage to go talk to somebody, or if you were mad at somebody, you had to go up and actually face them. And a lot of times, you know, that might lead to getting your butt kicked. So people wouldn't do it. Like you just wouldn't act at all like you do now. So it's kind of, I don't know, I find it a little ironic. And I know this point has been made, but that social media is supposed to connect us. And in ways it does, but in more ways, I think it doesn't. It just draws us, you know, to, like you were saying, like to not see the humanity in one another.
Yeah, you know, you should go back and check out my other book, #DoNotDisturb, because I talk about everything you just said and what that's doing to kids. The fact that, you know, you don't walk up to someone and ask them out on a date and you text it, and why those character building moments of walking up to someone and sometimes, yes, getting rejected were really important in building backbones in young people. You know, I'm kind of similar in the sense that I didn't get my first cell phone until I was in college. So I really went through those formative years without all of that noise constantly. I played outside with my friends and that was all that was happening. You were just playing. And I remember, you know, walking past a playground and seeing a bunch of kids just sitting in the playground looking down at electronics and thinking, wow, that's incredibly sad. Really, really sad. So I think, you know, technology was a component of this book because you see what kids are doing now. I mean, they have iPads before, they're like just out of the womb and they're like sliding, you know, so it's scary. But what I really want is a strong, you know, independent thinking child. And what I decided to do in this book is to, you know, take that little bit that I had from #DoNotDisturb and expand it into all different areas of life. Because what you really want is to send your kids out into the world and know that they are equipped. The world is hard. You know, it's not full of safe spaces, the real world. Maybe some academic classes are, unfortunately, but it's not full of safe spaces. And every time you fall, there aren't two pillows just perfectly placed below your knees, and you're going to get fired from jobs. God knows I know that. And you're going to have really tough times. You know, family events are going to happen. People are going to die. You're going to lose people. And then there's going to be a whole bunch of happy moments too. But you have to be able to navigate that stuff. You need a backbone. You need, you know, the courage of your convictions. You need faith in something bigger than yourself, ideally. You need an open forum to discuss things that are happening to you. I wanted all of that as a foundation for my kid and for everyone's child, because regardless of your politics or how you feel about this issue or that issue, you want your child to be equipped to handle the world. And what we're doing now is it's like we're creating a nation of babies, only they're like 30, you know, and it's sad. It's very, very sad when you encounter a 30-year-old that can't, you know, sit in a room full of people without being threatened by a different opinion. That's incredibly troublesome to me. And if you talk to older generations, like sometimes I'll talk to my dad and he's just like, he can't, he's like beside himself because, you know, growing up for him, it was like these people would have just not survived, you know? So you need to there are some values don't go out of style and they need to be held on to. So this is kind of my plea to say, hey, everyone out there who cares about this stuff, help me preserve it through not just this book, but the lessons inside of it.
Yeah. My mom was just telling me about how her dad would talk about, you know, the Great Depression, and, you know, now we're getting all these stimulus checks and they're just throwing money at it. And she was saying that they would get, you know, like lard and things were the government stimulus checks back at that point, like oats. You got a couple bags of rice or something like that. That was the stimulus check back then. So they must be rolling over in their graves now. To your point, watching these people try to, you know, don't say those words, you know, they're hurting me.
Right. That hurt my feelings. It's like, you know, and they're labeled as harsh when, you know, my dad is like, he'll often be like, grow up, you know, you need to grow up. And that's viewed as harsh. But there are moments when you just need to be an adult and you need to understand that people see things differently and you don't always have to cower in a corner. Like, what kind of lesson is that? If someone young was watching that moment on The View, I mean, what a terrible lesson for them. You know, you hear something you don't like, you shut it down, misinformation conversation, goodbye. No, that's not going to work for you in life. Try that with your boss one day and see how it goes. I mean, it's not going to go very well. So, I am watching what's going on in the world, in media, social media. Big tech has its own agenda. Not only do they want us to all be puppets, because that's how they engineer those sites, they want us all at each other's throats. And there's no room for nuance. You can forget it. And this is also a critique, by the way. This isn't just, for the left. On the right, too, there's an increasing intolerance just for disagreement. I mean, I've been on shows where I agree 90% of the time, but that 10%, no good.
Oh,
that's bad.
Throw it out. Yeah,
it's very bad. Not only throw it out, but throw you out. So it's like,
you see it all the time in the comments. It's like, you can post stuff all day long that they love, and then the minute, I can't believe you'd post that, unsubscribe. It's like, what do you mean? One thing, and you don't even know why we posted it or the reason behind it. You don't even ask. Just unsubscribe. Or I'm done with you. I don't know where you're going to find any person or any organization that you agree with 100%.
Right. Yeah. And the thing is, though, like when it happens on the right, and I'm on the right? So this is, it bothers me even more because we are supposed to care about, like I was told folks on the right, conservatives, care about diversity of thought. Like this is my mantra, and I do care about it. If you care about it, then fight for those conversations on the right as well. Like it's not enough. You can critique when people on the left shut someone down, and you should. That is ridiculous. But also when it happens on your own side, be open to saying there is a tent here. And if we care about individual freedom and free thinking people, they're not always going to toe the line I like or someone else likes. That would be odd. It would be if someone agrees, like I always say, if you find someone who agrees with a politician 100% of the time, just stop following them. That's a parrot. That's not a thinking person. Or maybe they work for them on the side and are getting a few text messages. I don't know. But that's not, I mean, I can't think of one person in life anywhere that I agree with all the time. I mean, anyone in my own family. I mean, my husband and I surely aren't agreeing a lot. So we parent differently. Like I love him to pieces, but we're two different people. So just welcome that, it's been very frustrating on that count for me.
It's that obsession with emotion, right? Which I think the right critique the left on a lot, historically, and yet it seems to be creeping in. My emotions matter so much that nobody else can have an opinion. That's a really unhealthy way to live in general, but it's really toxic for politics. And to your point, I think, if you're on the right and you see it happening, you've got to call it out and say, look, this is what we stand against. We stand for the ability to have that ideological diversity. Yeah,
I 100% agree. I've been trying to do that. Of course, that's met with some heat as well. It was interesting, too, booking this tour. There were some people who really were excited to have me on. I did a lot of podcasting because that's what I wanted to do. I feel like that's where the real conversations happen. It's not like, you have 3 minutes, say everything you need to say, and then get cut off. It just felt like it wasn't the right book for that. But occasionally there would be someone, we can't have her on because she once said this. And I'd be like, okay, then you're definitely not the right person to be talking to about a book about free thinking. So thank you. Thank you for alerting me to that, and it happened on the left and it happened on the right. But it was really an interesting journey of, people aren't even embarrassed to say that. It's so funny. What I would just say to everyone is, this is supposed to be a country that's rich in ideas and full of people who, yes, want solutions and want to say how they feel and want to sit at holiday gatherings and have these spirited debates. And in order to do that, you have to encourage that free thinking and freedom. You can't shut it down, and you can't decide that if someone doesn't agree with you all the time, they're not worth your time, because then forget it. And then maybe it's just you at the table having that turkey dinner alone, because I don't know if you're going to have fun like that. But it's an important message. And there's a lot about holidays. It's also kind of, I was originally going to put this out in December, but December's like a crazy month. But I was like, it's a Christmas book. I talk about Christmas trees, and I talk about, the baby decorating and all the traditions that went around that for my family. So that too, for people who are really into Christmas, and I love Christmas.
Oh, you're speaking Trey's language right there.
Yeah.
Hey, that is my thing. I was going to say, Jedediah, I know we've been going for a little while, but your comment about fixing the toxicity and maybe getting out of our silos and having more diversity toxicity. I was listening to Ben Shapiro talking to Barry Weiss the other day, and he said a progressive friend of his asked him, how can we break out of this toxicity? And he said, post a picture of you and me together on Twitter and say, look, we don't agree on anything, but we're good friends. And he said, and no one will do it because everybody is scared of getting canceled. They're scared of their own coming for them. But really, that is the best way out, is just to say, look, I'm Jedediah Bila. This is my opinion, but I'm really good friends with this really progressive person, and we agree on 10% and disagree on 90%, but that doesn't matter because they're another human being and I love them. So, how do we model that, I guess, not on social media, but in our actual lives?
It takes guts. It really does, because you have to stop caring about what everyone thinks. And that's really hard to do. There's people that, they're so worried about how they're going to be received by an audience, people particularly who have these high profile, jobs, and they're saying, well, am I going to get canceled? You're right. Am I going to lose my job? Am I going to lose my fan base? So then when I go put a book out, is no one going to want to read it? There's so much thinking about that. And there's so little thinking about, wow, this would actually be good for the world to see. So I think it's going to take people really getting their priorities in order, and figuring out, what do I want for my kids? What do I want for my grandkids? What world do I want them to grow up in? Because this is only going to get worse and more polarized, and people are going to be less able to talk to each other if it doesn't get fixed. So it just takes courage. It takes talking to your kids and talking to your family members and talking to those people. I have, liberals that I'm friends with, who I have conversations like that with all the time in real life. You have to basically do what you're unable, even if you're unable to do it in the public sphere, do it privately, do it at the dinner tables, do it at lunches, have those respectful exchanges, leave being grateful. I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine who's super, super liberal, on every issue. And, we had a great conversation on in some areas. I wound up saying, well, I didn't really think about that. That's a good point. Let me sit with that for a minute, which was great. She felt the same way. And before I left, I said, I just want to make sure this felt good for you too. Like, this was good for me. And she was like, you know what? It really did. So sometimes those little tiny things, those moments, they do have a domino effect. They do trickle out. So if public figures are, worried about their reputations or their book sales or their, oh my God, I'm going to lose followers, there's not much you can do about that. But in your private life, you can do then what they're not doing. I mean, I would be happy to post a picture with someone and make that I'm kind of an oddball in that I really don't care what anyone thinks. And I realize maybe that's to my own detriment sometimes. You're like, yeah, Jed, that's why you've gotten fired a couple of times. But no, really, that's maybe. But I don't care, because everything that I do, more important than followers or how many people even buy this book, is my little guy that I look at every day who, like, everything is for him. I want him to live in a better world than exists today. So that's not going to happen if I don't do my part. So if everyone thought that way, it would just get done.
So what you're saying is, don't accuse people of misinformation and kick them out of your house during a conversation.
Yeah. Can you imagine a Thanksgiving dinner and you're like, this is misinformation, take her turkey away. Can you imagine? This is not helpful in any way. And it's sad. It's sad because, friendships are getting broken for what? I mean, really think about it. Me just saying, I want you to be able to make this decision for yourself is so threatening that it needed that moment. That's sad to me. It would be different if I was saying, you need to do what I'm saying. I'm stepping in and no, that's what they're saying to me. Yeah. Like, ignore your doctor, Jed. You've got 4 doctors that said this isn't good for you. Nope. I'm going to need, the head of corporate media to make that decision for you. Oh, okay. Come on now. We can be decent people and disagree, but really understand the humanity that we all need to feel in these moments. Come on.
Amen. Amen to that. All right. The book is Dear Hartley, Jedediah Bila. We're so glad that you took a few minutes, well, a bunch of minutes here. But we're glad that you stopped by and spent some time with us.
Thank you so much. This was a great conversation, and I know Hartley appreciates it too. So thank you.